Welcome to the Near Memo, a weekly conversation about search, social, and commerce. What happened, why it matters, and the implications for local.
Okay, well, anyway, I'm stealing your time. Go ahead.
Anyway, no, it's fine. As Mike has already alluded to, Greg's already alluded to, I think that Google is just positioning Bard in a very different place than Bing for, as Greg pointed out, very good reason. Bing has absolutely nothing to lose in search. And it is the hook of we are doing something new and different and come try Bing again is worth.
Come try Bing and use Edge browser.
And right, is all of those things are well worth a potentially sort of substandard, integration or lack of product strategy or whatever. Like just getting people to try Bing is worth whatever sort of negative effects might come with that. In Google's case, they already are the dominant player in search, and even if there aren't any revenue considerations that they're worried about, which I agree with Greg, there probably are at some level of Google. Even if those don't exist, they probably don't. I mean, just conceptually, it's just a lot of work to try to merge two products together. And it makes more sense for Google to sort of keep search as it is, don't lose too much there, and see what we can learn from Bard as a separate product. In terms of learning from Bard as a separate product, I also don't think that they really did design it with search in mind as the primary use case. I gave Bard, and Mike, you have some examples too of really great, quote unquote, great experiences with Bard. I gave it two really esoteric, detailed queries related to NBA basketball. I asked it a very detailed sort of statistical analysis question about what net rating the Timberwolves needed to average over the next 9 games to finish with a offensive rating at a certain number for the whole season. It couldn't quite answer that question in terms of giving me a numeric value, but it gave a really detailed response of how the Timberwolves could improve their net offensive rating, which I thought was pretty mind-blowing. So it clearly understood, at least scraped the right sources to give me a coherent answer of how the Timberwolves could do that. The second question I asked was related to a fake trade between two NBA teams. And it actually it proposed 2 really good fake trades, but it was based on data from last season. So it clearly at some level sort of understood the goals of what I was trying to ask, even if it couldn't quite answer them. And so those are those are not search queries, right? Those are truly sort of, if I had a piece of software and I could fiddle around with it for 10 minutes, this is the answer that I want to get from it. And it's thinking more that way rather than give me a list of stuff. It seems to be more sort of computationally answer driven than a search.
Let me challenge you. So that's great and it's impressive, but why is that not a search query? Because it's not a search query because our concept of what search is has been narrowly defined by Google and its capabilities and limitations and the way that Google has structured search results. But what is the difference between a search and asking a question? I mean, where would you go?
I would draw the line in terms of my 2 queries. I just gave an example, and Mike has an even better one. I think of those as action requests, not search queries. When I'm doing a search, I'm looking for information, and when I have an action query, I'm asking it to go and do stuff for me and come back with an answer. And those to me are 2 different things. An action query is something that I would potentially, I could hire a human being to do and have that human being come back and give me an answer. I'm not going to hire a human being to find out where local inventory exists or what the best roofing companies are or whatever.
Okay, fair enough.
It's a very different exercise.
Then that bleeds over into the realm of the virtual assistant or the assistant.
Right.
And one could argue that the assistant is an evolution of what search has been historically trying to do. Years ago, I don't know if it still exists, there were bots that would where you could monitor price. It still exists. You could monitor price changes on products, or you could have the Google alerts to some degree is not an action query, maybe in the sense that you're talking about, but there are these different sort of adjacent functions or permutations of what we have historically called search that this starts to get into in a more effective way. So Mike, reveal your experiment.
Can I just make a quick qualifying?
Yeah, of course.
So I gave two similar questions, not exactly the same, but two similar exercises through Bing. Bing refused to answer, right? So Google is like trying to be a little bit more aggressive, I think, in the types of queries that it answers. Clearly, Bing just said, that's not something I can do. I'm not up to date on whatever, it gave defenses as to why it wouldn't answer.
Well, so. Quality, back to the hallucination point, but sort of in an adjacent point, quality is a big issue. One of the things I asked Bing GPT was, give me, 10 best practices for local SEO or top 10 things to do for local SEO. And it basically chose some random article and provided a list. And, I'd never heard of this blog. There was nobody associated with it that was reputable or that I'm not trying to defame anybody, but it was just some random blog post. And then it chose a Moz article as a supplement to that, which was about structuring URLs. It wasn't about local in particular. So this exemplifies the sort of randomness of some of the information, which is of dubious quality in many instances. Mike, I'm going to keep talking unless you say something.
Well, so I did two experiments. One was I took the bulk of an article, cranked it into Bard, and said, give me 15 tweets, each less than X length, that summarize this article, which is a difficult thing to do when you're doing it manually, just trying to pick out the highlights and then do that type of thing. And it did it, whereas neither ChatGPT nor Bing Chat would even attempt it. Both denied it. The second thing I did, which all three agreed to do, was I asked it to write a blog post, 750 words in a certain style, on a topic of overtime pay in New York State and what were the primary considerations and whether an employee could sue. And of those, they all wrote articles. Bing was the weakest. I thought Google was the strongest article. Will Scott liked the ChatGPT article, but either way, Google did a really good job writing that article. And it's the kind of blog post that,
SEO chum
that some, employment lawyers just need, right? If they've got an office in New York. And so it's not going to be, no matter who writes it, it's not going to be, hopefully it's accurate, but it's not going to be that unique.
So there are going to be hundreds and hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands.
Yeah, there already is, right? I mean,
so there's going to right. So the internet is going to be full of these explainer, top of funnel articles, mostly written by AI with some light.
Yeah, we've cut the crappy writer middleman out of the system, is what we've done. Right. Now the business owner can write his own crappy article.
Yeah, I mean, the question is going to be how diligent are people in kind of their editorial oversight and their fact checking of these articles. And we've already seen with CNET as just one example. They sort of said, "Oh, we're using this, and we are pretty vigorous in our fact checking," and then they just got outed as it was an embarrassing situation for them because people
that being said, if the owner of a small legal practice actually reads the article and vets it, we're talking about a different standard here, where it helps that lawyer be more productive, right? Which is the purpose of Bard, I would contend.
And that's very time saving, efficiency, and inspiration. I mean, I think these tools are very valuable. I sound like I'm critical, but I think that they have a lot of value to bring to people, just provided that it's handled ethically, that people are diligent about it. But I fear for the future of the internet, because I think it's just gonna be a wash, and it's like the content farms. I hesitate to use the word on steroids, but whatever, times 10.
Yeah.
And I don't think Google is going to catch it. People are very confident that Google is going to be able to just spank all the bad AI content that people generate. I do not think that. I think it's just going to proliferate, and we'll see. We'll see what happens.
Back to Eric Schmidt, circa 2009. Brands are how you sort out the cesspool of the internet.
That's exactly right. I think brands become even more important. There was an article that I linked to on Read, I can never say it. Read, Write, We White Web. I own a mansion and a yacht. Read Write Web that was talking about link building being even more important. My name is Elma Fudd. I own a mansion and a yacht, or whatever the line was. Even more important in this era of AI.
Yes.
Now, I thought you were imitating Eric Schmidt.
My name is Eric Schmidt. I'm involved.
He owns
Lots of
8 mansions and 12 yachts, Mike.
Yeah,
so.
I was going to say a lot of questionable
and 3 girlfriends.
Yeah, and a partridge in a pear tree. Link building more important in the era of AI, which is interesting. It's another version of what you're saying, David. That like human intervention and humans pointing to, link building is sort of manipulative, but the idea of links being even more important. Brand is definitely important, provided that the brand is conducting itself ethically and doing the right thing. But it's one last thing that you saw the Trump, I think they were Midjourney images.
They were Midjourney images of Trump being arrested.
Oh.
So did you not see them, David?
Yes, I did see them. I wasn't initially sure. There's a lot happening with Trump these days, so I wasn't sure exactly.
Well,
what you were
exactly. 2 points about them. The quality of those images was unbelievable. They're almost photographic, not quite. You can sort of tell it's not a photograph, but if you glanced at them and scrolling through Twitter or something, you might think, oh, these are real images. I mean, they were sort of outrageous, Trump running from the police and being, manhandled or whatever. But this really illustrates the danger that we face of disinformation, because those pictures were quite convincing, and somebody created them in 20 minutes.
And the prompts have now been banned on Midjourney. Those prompts that he used.
Yeah, but I mean,
I'm just saying after the fact, but it's still interesting.
Yeah, but I mean, people are going to think about all the Eastern European trolls that got involved in the 2016 election, 2020 election. They're going to use these tools like crazy to create all kinds of realistic sounding fake news stories that are just slightly off. The images are very compelling. The video stuff, the deep fakes, that's going to explode. It's going to be hard. It's whack-a-mole.
And the problem of attempting to manage a prompt on a product like Midjourney is made silly because these image generators are now available on an M2 Mac or an M1 Mac. Mm-hmm. Now you can download them and now run them locally. So it's like there is no regulation of the use or misuse of this at this point.
Well, and I mean, there's a whole set of intellectual property issues. People creating avatars, character AI. A company was allowing the creation of video content, AI video, and avatars that were famous people, characters that are copyrighted. So this is another angle on the challenges that we face with all this.
I'm waiting for the first Mike Blumenthal video blog generated fully by AI. I want to see what he says.
Well, we could do that. We could do that tomorrow. We could use it, take our voices, write a script, use some sort of video based on still images or existing video and create a fake podcast. That's how we'll do it going forward. You'll never know if it's really us or our AI avatars.
Will subscribers increase or decrease when we do that? It's a good experiment. A good experiment for us.
Right. Okay. All right. So there's a lot more to talk about, but we're over time. So thanks again for listening. Subscribe, tell your friends, and we'll see you next week. Hopefully with Darren Shaw to talk about the local search ranking factors. That's coming up very soon, and we'll dive into that next week with him. So have a good week.
Thanks for joining David, Mike, and Greg. To stay on top of the latest developments in local, subscribe to our newsletter at nearmedia.co. We'll see you next week.